I was on a chartered flight, a check in my pocket for more than my father made in 10 years, and I felt like a complete fraud. I'd spent my life building a bank account thinking that was the goal. I'm 68, retired for 4 years now, and what saved me wasn't a stock or a strategy. It was finally understanding the one thing my father tried to teach me about money, a lesson I ignored for decades because I thought my way was smarter. It cost me more than I want to admit, and it's the only reason I can sit here now in this quiet house and feel like any of it was worth it. My father, Elliot, never used words like portfolio or asset allocation. He ran a small print shop. He closed at 6, Friday at 3 for Shabbat. Success to him was measured by who was at the dinner table, not what was in the ledger. I thought that was quaint, sentimental. I was building the business, connecting people, moving things, the deals, and my scorecard was commas in a bank statement. I missed dinners. I took calls during school plays. I thought the money would eventually buy back the time. Barbara would look at me and she didn't have to say anything, I knew. But the deal was always more urgent, or it felt that way. The first real lesson, the one that finally cracked me open, was this: money is a tool for freedom, not a scorecard. I learned that the hard way at 64, trying to step back from everything I'd built. I'd set it up to run without me. That was the plan. And on that flight home, the one with the big check, I realized I had no idea what the freedom was for. I had the tool, but I'd forgotten the blueprint. My father's freedom was leaving the shop to be home. My freedom was, what? More deals? More commas? The silence in that cabin was louder than any negotiation. He taught me a second thing, which I thought was bad business for years. The best investment is in something that can't be repossessed. He put every spare dollar into our education, even though I dropped out. He paid for my mother's sister to come to this country. He bought a man in our community a used delivery van to start a business. No contracts, just a handshake. I thought it was poor capital allocation, emotion over logic. Then he got sick, and the people who showed up, the family, the community, the man with the van now running a successful company, they were the equity he'd built. You can't foreclose on that. I'd built a business that could run without me. He'd built a world that would show up for him. The third lesson was the simplest and the hardest. Your word is your first currency, and if it's no good, neither is the rest. He once turned down a huge, lucrative order because he'd promised his paper supply to another, smaller customer. He told me, "A handshake is a contract you carry in your face." I nodded. I didn't get it. In my world, a contract was a document you had lawyers parse. I broke my word to be home for dinner more times than I can count. I broke my word to see a school play, to take a vacation, to be present. I thought the deal was the important promise. I was trading the wrong currency, and that debt, to Barbara, to Daniel, and Rachel, is one I'm still paying. You can't wire transfer an apology. So what saved my retirement? It wasn't a stock tip or a tax trick. It was the brutal, late-in-life realization that my father was building a life, and I was just building a bank account. The commas were there, but the context was missing. Now, I measure a day differently. Did I talk to Daniel on the West Coast? Did I make my grandson Eli laugh? Barbara and I have a rule, a new one. No money talk after 7 p.m. It's harder than it sounds, old habits. The painting behind me in my study, the one my father bought for $50 at a flea market and framed himself, is worth more to me than any check I ever deposited. He knew what he was buying. I finally think I do too. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're building something or walking away from something, or just wondering what the point of the commas is, tell me where you are in the comments. I read them. Barbara does too. We talk about them. It turns out that's part of building the life too. Ever look at a bank statement and feel absolutely nothing? Ever look at a bank statement and feel absolutely nothing? We also get other singles of most important systems that we see this bank statement. Ever look at a bank statement and feel absolutely nothing? Ever look at a bank statement and feel absolutely nothing? I did about six months ago, sitting right here. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Rosen. I'm 68 and I'm sitting in my study. That painting behind me? My father bought it for $50 at a flea market, framed it himself. And I want to talk about the one piece of money advice that actually saved my retirement. It came from him, a man who never once used the word portfolio. I spent decades ignoring what he said, thinking my way was smarter, and it cost me a lot more than just money. That cost became crystal clear not when I was building, but when I was trying to figure out how to stop. I was 64, on a chartered flight back from what I'd told everyone was my last deal. I had a physical check in my jacket pocket for more than my father made in 10 years of running his little print shop. Barbara was waiting at home. She'd already asked me point blank if I was sure, and I was celebrating, but I felt like a complete fraud because I had no idea what that money was for anymore. None. The business ran without me. That was the plan. And I was staring out that oval window at 30,000 feet, completely untethered. Staring at that check was like looking at a map to a place I didn't want to go. And right then, my father's voice came back to me, clear as day, starting with a lesson about his shop, closing at 6 every night. He closed at 6 every night, Friday at 3, for Shabbat dinner, no exceptions. The money was on the table, sure, but the real metric was who was sitting around it. I spent 20 years using money to keep score. Bigger deals, nicer cars, the private flight. I won a lot of those games, and I lost track of who was at my table. Barbara would tell you, the kids would tell you, I was there but I wasn't, and that's a debt you can't pay off with a check. He invested in things no bank could ever take back. My education, even though I dropped out, paid for my aunt to come here from the old country, bought a man, a competitor actually, a used delivery van so he could start over. I thought it was sentimental, bad capital. Then he got sick. And that van, that man was at our house every day. That aunt moved in to help my mother. That's a different kind of equity. It showed up. But the foundation of it all, the real first currency, was something even simpler and harder to fake, your word. He once turned down a huge print order, a year's revenue, because he'd already promised the paper stock to Mrs. Glickman for her small newsletter. I asked him why. He just looked at me and said, "A handshake is a contract you carry in your face." I nodded like I understood. I didn't. Not for 30 years. I broke my word to be home for dinner more times than I can count, thinking the deal was more important. I'm still paying that debt to Barbara and the kids. It compounds differently. That contract in your face. I carried a lot of broken ones. I'd tell Daniel I'd be at his little league game, and a call would come in. A can't-miss deal. I'd miss the game. I'd tell Barbara we'd take that trip, just us, and then something would blow up that needed me. It was always something that needed me. And I went because the money was real and the promise felt flexible, like I could make it up later. You can't. You just carry the absence. The missed game becomes a pattern, becomes a memory he has of you not being there. The postponed trip becomes a thing she stopped expecting. That's the interest. It compounds in silence. The real cost hit me about 2 years ago. I was up north visiting Daniel and his family. My grandson Eli, named for my father, wanted to show me how he could throw a baseball. He's 10. And I'm standing there in his backyard, and he's winding up, and he has this look of pure concentration. And it hit me, like a physical thing in my chest. I never saw Daniel do this. I have no memory of my son at 10 throwing a ball. I was somewhere else, probably on a phone, closing something that felt vital. And in that moment, with Eli's pitch sailing toward me, I realized I'd traded 1,000 moments like this for a number in an account, a number I was now retiring on. The math suddenly seemed insane, the worst deal I ever made. Barbara knew. She always knows. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just put her hand on my back later that evening and said, "You're here now." And that was worse in a way, because it was grace I hadn't earned. That's the debt. You don't repay it. You just try from where you are to stop adding to the principal. You show up. You be where you said you'd be. And you understand that a kept promise today is the only currency that matters for the past. It doesn't fix it. It just acknowledges the debt. And you live there in that acknowledgement. It's quieter. So what saved my retirement wasn't a stock tip or a tax trick. It was finally understanding that my father was building a life while I was just building a bank account. He was investing in people and time. I was investing in numbers. The numbers got bigger, but the life got quieter. Now I try to measure a day differently. Did I talk to Daniel on the West Coast? Did I make Eli laugh? Barbara and I have a rule. No money talk after 7 p.m. It sounds simple. It's harder than it sounds. Some nights we make it, some nights we don't. The point is we're trying. We're building something that can't be repossessed. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're building something right now or walking away from something or just wondering what the point of it all is, tell me. Leave a comment. I'm curious. What's one thing you saw someone older do with money that made sense to you? Or one thing that didn't? It doesn't have to be a parent, a mentor, a neighbor, anyone. I find those stories more useful than any finance book. I read them. Barbara does too. We talk about them. If you want to catch those conversations, subscribe. I put something out most weeks. All right. Thanks for your time.